want to read two pieces. The first is the piece in the anthology. And it's called A Poem About Grounds. Wittgenstein was supposed to have come up with his theory of language games by attending a football match. I couldn't find any reference to it in the Ray Monk biography, so I wrote this instead. It's got two epigraphs, both from philosophical investigations. If these are not grounds, then what are grounds? And what if I imagine senseless combinations of words? A good ground is one that looks like this. Carrow Road is a good ground. I can feel it in the centre circle, and I can feel it on the touchline. Terry Alcock, know what I mean? Forward Terry Alcock in his proper place at Carrow Road with Johnny Arnold in the right colours makes the description more accurate. Craven Cottage is a good ground too. Everybody calling them a cottager almost fits the picture of an English sentence. Like little Sammy Chung at the Stadium of Light, which is not a good ground. I would like to say it is a good ground, but it is not. Nobody feels it on the halfway line or in the corner arc. Little Sammy Chung at the Stadium of Light does not make sense, like Kevin Keelan leaving the recreation ground because I tell him to. Bring me sugar, Kevin Keelan, and Kevin Keelan, bring me milk. Poor Kevin Keelan. The recreation ground is not a good ground, unlike the valley which comes up to the standard of good grounds everywhere. The valley which has undergone remarkable changes, like Justin Fashanu. Know what I mean? Forward Justin Fashanu saying to himself, poor Kevin Keelan too, because Justin Fashanu comes up to the standard of good forwards everywhere. Sometimes with his brother John, forming and testing a hypothesis, saying to himself before he arrives at the valley or at the den, a good ground is one that looks like this. I can feel it in the dugout, and I can feel it in the changing rooms, and sometimes presenting the results in tables and diagrams. If anyone said poor Clint Easton, I wouldn't understand him either. If anyone said funky Billy Chin, I wouldn't believe him, because this is a good ground and in its proper place. On the head, Clint, and on the head, Billy, are sorts of statements about the ground that makes events possible at Plough Lane or at the Dell, though Plough Lane and the Dell are no longer grounds, and I am misled by this way of putting it, even though I saw a photograph of the club secretary's house. I'm only leaving the ground because he tells me to, going right at the sign for sugar and left at the sign for milk. I don't even take sugar in my half-time tea. The essential thing is that the ground is a good one, even a beautiful one, like White Hart Lane, where I'm always home. In all seasons, watching Ricky Vila and his fighting cocks. Asked what I understand by Ricky Vila, he is the man of whom all this is true. Ricky Vila and his fighting cock, Guzman. Only he has turned out false. I can feel it in his letters, and I can feel it in his words, passing from the sentence to the proposition with Cyril Regis at the Rico Arena. What sort of ground is that? Enormously familiar Cyril Regis, over whom the eye passes in the Hall of Fame. All I know is I looked at Cyril Regis intently, and as I did so, I thought of the Berlin ground, and in a queer way, the word Cyril Regis did not trouble me, even though the Berlin ground is identical with itself, and in a queer way, the word Cyril Regis fit into its white surrounding, like good forwards everywhere, hitting the post. Know what I mean? Using language to hit the post at the Stadium of Light, or at Stamford Bridge, which is not a good ground either. Forward Vivian Woodward is always hitting the post. Thank heaven, Vivian Woodward. Thank heaven for the little goalposts of the grounds of England. Charlie Mitten is always hitting the post too, because this is how it is on English grounds. This is how it is in front of goal. Forward Charlie Mitten hitting the post and handling the ball at Bramall Lane, which nevertheless is a good ground I tried to describe, but the violent thudding of my heart made me use the wrong expression. It doesn't matter. At Bramall Lane, they always do the same thing in front of goal, staring at the object in front of them and hitting the post. I would like to say it is the same in German, but declining Torpfosten doesn't make sense, like Little Sammy Chung or Funky Billy Chin getting it on at the King Power Stadium, which is not a good ground. I've thought it over, and it is only roughly a ground. And I can't say what goes on there. Know what I mean? I want to tell Don Revie about that sentence. Knock, knock, Don Revie. Don Revie who? Don Revie, of course, is not a ground. He is a mistake, like asking Frank Ramsey, what's it like for him to come? Know what I mean? What's it like for me to expect him to come? Poor Frank Ramsey, I expect he'll come, but I am rushing ahead when my aim is to teach Frank Ramsey to pass. Over here, Frank, move it about on the surface according to the rules, and the weather is fine or it is raining at the Abbey ground, which is a better ground than you might think. Oh, if only he would come. I can't keep my mind on my work. I can feel it, though I can't pronounce it. Die Verdopplung der Verneinung. If only he wouldn't delay the start of play. If only he would come on time to the Abbey ground and not to the Franz Hohr Stadion, because the Franz Hohr Stadion is not a ground. It is a sound I once heard the beginning and end of, like the no man's land between Hans Krankel and Archie Leach, whose senseless drawings tell me nothing about the field of play, the centre mark, the penalty spot, other games. And this is a piece of marine psychopathology. The problem is, I'm besieged by galleons. Naturally, nobody welcomes them, the galleons, which interfere with normal life. The attack submarine, too, is difficult to ignore. Often, I go to great lengths to avoid it. The hospital ship I invariably return to. Like the Gundelau, it is arranged just right, unlike the trimaran, which is senseless and irrational. Repeatedly, I check the hydrogen tanker. The problem is I am besieged by it, touching it like the ferry, though the ferry and the galleons are not related. Washing the ferry again and again. The armed yacht is difficult to ignore. Invariably, I return to the floating restaurant. Rereading the menu, nobody welcomes it, the floating restaurant. Rereading the menu until it is clean like a terrible, terrible paddle steamer. Basically, the ocean liner is no good, and I am besieged by it. Touching the banisters on its staircases, invariably I return to the banisters and the door handles. The men of war, too, are difficult to ignore. Shaking hands with them does not mean they are not men of war, unlike the icebreaker, which is just right. Unlike the patrol boat, which is just right. Unlike the bulk carrier, which is just right. Nobody welcomes the men of war, which are not inherently enjoyable. The problem is I am besieged by them, counting them and saying their names out loud like Beauchamp Duff or Clive of India and shaking hands. The problem is I am late for work on the clipper ship, which also is contaminated. Washing the ferry again and again. Invariably I return to it, turning the lights of the lake freighter on and off. Invariably I return to the battle cruiser, which is difficult to ignore. Think about the battle cruisers you have been on. Clearing your throat on HMS Invincible. Clearing your throat on HMS Indomitable. Clearing your throat on HMS Inflexible. The problem is I am besieged by them. Naturally, nobody welcomes the East Indiaman, which is easier to face than the Cromer Stephen. Invariably, I am careless on the Clyde Puffer as I am careless on the Durham boat. Try not to think about them, nor the hermaphrodite brig. Men and women equally leaving the windows open and going to great lengths to avoid the telephones which interferes with normal life. Showering repeatedly on boarding the Barca Longa. Going up and down the gangway of the very large ore carrier over and leaving the doors open. This is difficult to ignore, like the minesweeper. Naturally, nobody welcomes the minesweeper, which cannot be stopped. Touching it at work or at university, the problem is I am besieged by it. invariably returning to the flotel whenever possible, invariably returning to the flotel for complete recovery. The flotel, which is difficult to ignore, unlike the showboat, which is perfectly safe, though deep down I want the flotel to pull away. Repeatedly I check it. Repeatedly I check the hydrogen tanker, which is gradually worsening. Naturally, I neither want nor welcome the mothership. Like the clipper ship, it is contaminated and I am besieged by it. Often going to extreme lengths to block it, like the starship, which is senseless and irrational, like walking the plank on the pirate ship time after time, which invariably interferes with normal life. The problem is the pirate ship is dirty. Avoiding the pirates, or arranging the pirates until they are just right, saying their names out loud like Calico Jack or Redlegs Greaves, or washing the pirate ship again and again until it is clean like the Incredible Hulk, often for hours or days. This is the best way. Basically, the pirate ship is no good like eating in the cafe of the unprotected cruiser. Trying not to think about the ketch or the knar, trying not to think about the cough or the coke, especially the coke, going round and around the toilets on the survey vessel, going to great lengths to avoid the replenishment oiler. Though the replenishment oiler and the survey vessel are not related, I am besieged by them. Always doing something sinful, always poisoning the food on the troop ship, which is difficult to ignore, though nobody welcomes the troop ship. Bathing with the troops and hugging them, or jumping in front of the troops with the aim of hurting them, I fear I may be labelled. Turning for help to the reefer is no use, nor to the junk which interferes with normal life. I can't even throw away my oar-powered pram. Invariably, I return to it, moving it from place to place on the high seas, where space is running out with the aircraft carrier on its way. Try not to think about it, nor the approaching dreadnought. Texting the captain to turn off the gas because I am the captain of the pram and I am not going ashore, even though the hydrogen tanker has gone right through me. Naturally, I made an emergency stop to brush my teeth. With a sweeping and rolling motion, first the upper teeth, then the lower teeth, paying extra attention to the waterline and brushing my tongue too for fresher breath, I really got a feel for it. The hard-to-reach back teeth are easy to ignore, unlike the destroyer. Naturally, nobody welcomes it, nor the ghost ship emitting ghost light drifting towards the true horizon. The problem is I am besieged by it, and the missing lifeboats I invariably return to, gripping them tightly and with all my hands washing them again and again. Thank you.